catch me howling at the moon.
What's up guys, and welcome back to Park Pros. I realized that it's been a minute since we did a coaster review on the channel, so I thought we'd switch things up a little bit today and talk about one of my personal favorite roller coasters, which also happens to be an Intamin masterpiece and the best coaster at Hersheypark. We're of course talking about Fahrenheit, the Intamin vertical lift hill coaster. And although this video may come off as satire, I'm dead serious when I say that Fahrenheit is a top 25 overall coaster for me. And I think it's right up there as one of the more underrated and underappreciated coasters in the country. So today we're going to give Fahrenheit some much deserved love. But first, you guys know what to do. Subscribe to the channel for more theme park and roller coaster videos just like this.
I want Hershey. I want Hershey.
In the decade prior to Fahrenheit's debut, Hersheypark had been adding a major new attraction every other year, with Great Bear in 1998, Lightning Racer in 2000, Roller Soaker in 2002, Storm Runner in 2004, and Reese's Extreme Cup Challenge in 2006. The park broke that trend in 2007 with the addition of a brand new in-park water park, the Boardwalk, for the park's 100th anniversary, and then went straight back to the drawing board with plans to open its 11th roller coaster in 2008. And following the successful installation of Storm Runner in 2004, Hersheypark decided to go back with Intamin for its next coaster. On September 27, 2007, Hersheypark announced Fahrenheit, a $12.1 million Intamin vertical lift coaster, the first of its kind, to replace the Western Shootout Slide Complex. Fahrenheit opened to the public on May 24, 2008 as the steepest roller coaster in the world with its 97-degree first drop, a record it held on to for an entire 6 weeks until Steel Hog opened at Indiana Beach.
Fahrenheit, featuring a 97-degree drop, one of the steepest in the world.
Let's quickly run through Fahrenheit's 2,700-foot layout. You start with the turnout of the station and climb up into the ride's signature 121-foot vertical lift hill. The general public goes nuts for this thing, and I will say that it is a pretty fun way to start out a roller coaster. You crest over the lift hill and crash down the ride's 97-degree beyond vertical drop, which is currently the 7th steepest drop in the world, and this gives some great ejector airtime. It's a really gut-wrenching moment. The ride's first two inversions occur during its Norwegian loop, which is essentially 2 consecutive half loops that you twist in and out of. Fahrenheit is one of 3 roller coasters in the entire world to incorporate this element. Next, you head up into a pretty standard Cobra roll, and then straight into back-to-back corkscrews, both of which are really tight elements with great pacing. Then you take a sharp right-hand turn, hit an ejector airtime hill, and take a helix up into the final brake run. To this day, Fahrenheit is still the only vertical lift hill roller coaster built by Intamin, and I think its uniqueness as a ride is its biggest strength. If I had to describe Fahrenheit in the nerdiest way possible, it's basically the love child of Maverick and Monster, and if you know me, those are both roller coasters that I really like. And like both Monster and Maverick, something that Fahrenheit does really well is pacing. All of the elements feel appropriately sized to the speed at which the ride takes them, which is something that I've noticed that Intamin always seems to do a really good job with. And while getting hang time can be kind of fun, I think it's generally pretty overrated. I would take flying through an inversion and getting some positive G's over crawling through it and getting hang time 9 out of 10 times. Because of Fahrenheit's good pacing, it makes some of these more routine looking elements decently intense, especially the 2 corkscrews. You get some decent whip and actually pull some G's. They're 2 great inversions. And when it comes to coasters whose primary purpose is to go upside down, I think Fahrenheit is one of the best in the United States. Comparing it to other inversion-based models, it's better than all of the B&M floorless coasters, and I also prefer it to all of the Gerstlauer Eurofighters and Infinity coasters in the United States as well. And Fahrenheit is a great testament to the old saying, bigger is not always better. It's far from the tallest, fastest, or longest coaster, even within Hersheypark itself. But each element is thoughtful and well-paced, every inversion hits, and overall, it's just a really fun roller coaster throughout. It's one of those those rides I just laughed my face off on the entire time. However, Fahrenheit does have a few negatives I can point out. The first being that the capacity is pretty dismal. It can theoretically do 850 riders per hour while running 3 trains. But from my understanding, it almost never runs the 3 trains, and even if it did, the ride is so short that they'd have to be dispatching at unrealistically efficient rates. But they're usually loading this thing up painfully slow. I think the poor capacity is probably the only reason why this model has never been replicated. Second, Fahrenheit is definitely lacking in the airtime department. There is some good ejector on the first drop and that one airtime hill right before the brake run, but those are quite literally the only 2 airtime moments on the ride. And the third thing is loosely related to the second, which is that Fahrenheit is not a very long roller coaster. From the top of the lift hill to the brakes, the ride duration is a little over 40 seconds long. Although I think you could make the argument that the vertical lift hill could be included in that, since it is a pivotal part of the ride experience. But regardless, Fahrenheit is a short roller coaster. For my own selfish reasons, I do wish they would have thrown an extra 3 or 4 airtime moments into the mix just to extend that layout. But again, it's not really the point of an inversion-focused coaster like Fahrenheit. Now, to address the clickbaity title of this video, I'm sure a lot of people will say, well, I agree with you that Fahrenheit is good, but there's no way that you actually think it's the best coaster at Hersheypark. So let me go through each of the coasters of Hersheypark and give you one reason why it's not better than Fahrenheit. Boring B&M, Kiddie Coaster, too old. Boring B&M, Boomerang, Gimmick, too rough. Ow. Too old. Close, but not as good. Too janky. Wild Mouse. There you go. In all seriousness though, you guys know that I'm not a Skyrush fan, and I actually have not been on Candemonium yet because it was closed for quote, high winds the last time I was at Hershey in 2020. And Stormrunner is fairly close to Fahrenheit in my rankings, but it's been like 10 years since I've been on it, and I just loved my 2020 Fahrenheit rides too much. So I genuinely do think that Fahrenheit is the best coaster at Hersheypark currently. Now, will it be the best coaster at Hershey 9 months from now? It's hard to say. I think if they turn Wildcat into a hyper hybrid coaster the level of Iron Gwazi or Steel Vengeance, then maybe not. But I think the fact that it would take that level of coaster to become the best ride at Hersheypark, regardless of what coaster you currently think is best in the park, speaks volumes to just how deep Hershey's coaster lineup is. But anyways, it's that time of the video where we throw Fahrenheit into a tier list. But before we do that, I want to make my first ever correction to a previous ranking. In my last coaster review, I put Pantheon in the elite tier. Pantheon is not an elite coaster. And I think going forward, I want to reserve that elite coaster status for the top 5% of coasters I've been on, which Pantheon is not, so I'm downgrading it to the great tier. And while Fahrenheit is higher in my rankings than Pantheon, it still doesn't fit this new criteria for me as a top 5% coaster. So Fahrenheit is also going into the great tier, but I still have very high praises for this coaster. Fahrenheit does its job as well as any inversion-centric roller coaster out there, which is good enough in itself to give it a nod as a great roller coaster. Throw in its great pacing, solid intensity, and exciting inversions, and Fahrenheit sits comfortably in that great tier. But that's gonna do it for my Fahrenheit review. Again, please consider subscribing if you're new around here, and I've got some big things in the works that you won't want to miss, so stay tuned. Thank you guys for checking out the video, and we'll see you all next time.